Evening, everyone. This is Talk We're Listening. This is not Bishop Randall. He is going to, we had to change the schedule a little bit, so I'll be making the programs on Monday, sometimes with my wife, sometimes with Pastor Bruno. And this is Talk We're Listening. So welcome to the program. We have a very interesting topic today. Why are so many marriages ending so rapidly?
It's a good question. Marriage is one of the building blocks of any society. Marriages are so important for families, for life to exist so that people can be happy and fulfilled. And if they end, it hurts not just the people who are married, but everyone around them, their children
And also, a thing about divorce is that, or when a marriage ends, when someone gets divorced, they're contagious. Studies have shown this.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce is contagious. If somebody in your close circle of friends, a family member, a brother, a sister, a very good friend, gets a divorce, it's easier for you to get a divorce because someone close to you that you love, that you believe in, that you trust, has gone ahead and done this. So now for you, it's not such a taboo thing to do anymore.
Right. You can see how it affects many families. And once a divorce happens, once unfaithfulness happens, once a marriage grows cold, it's really hard to rebuild that again, to find that again.
And so we'd like to comment, to tell us your problems, your opinions. What is, we're going to play something right now, a little clip about, what do you think, maybe you can write in about this. What do you think are the most common causes for a marriage getting cold or ending? Bruno, let's play that right now.
Why are so many marriages ending so rapidly? What's the major factor for this? Lack of love? Lack of intimacy? Lack of communication? Or lack of money? Choose your answer and explain why you chose it.
So, lack of intimacy, lack of love, money problems, and communication. What do you think? A lot of them are linked.
Yes.
Love is connected with intimacy, is connected with communication. If you really love someone, you're going to communicate with them.
You're going to want to be close to them. You're going to want to build that relationship with them. So they are all interlinked, but we want to know what you think.
Yes.
How about your experience? What do you feel has been a problem?
And a lot of you have another aspect to marriage too, because some of you are going through a long distance marriage.
Right.
So that puts a lot of extra stress on a marriage, a great deal. And if you've been able to keep your marriage together and strong, even though you've been away, working in another country, we'd like to hear how you've done it, what your secret is, because that's a huge feat. That would be really hard for us to do.
Right. And I think part of the reason why it would be hard for us is because we have a very high standard for what marriage is. And part of this program is to encourage you to have high standards, that it is possible. Maybe you've made mistakes in the past, but it is possible to have a happy marriage even now.
We had some people who have written in with some questions already.
Would you like me to read off one?
Sure.
Okay, here's one from Marie-Tess. Thanks, Marie-Tess. She says, marriages are ending so rapidly because, in her opinion, it's lack of communication. Like when there's an argument, we must solve the problem as soon as possible by using our intelligence, but usually we don't. Couples mostly remember the past, and they bring up the past into their arguments. So if both people in the couple, both of the couple, has pride, then they will think about separation. And I was this kind of wife before, but when I came to the church, I learned that when problems arise, to solve them as soon as possible by using intelligence and not emotion. You must have communication as often as possible.
I think in her response, in Marites' response, she mentions coming to the church and learning how not to give in to feelings.
Yes.
And I think this is a very big thing. Faith, believing in God. If both of you believe in God, Evelyn and I have been married for 35 years, and we both have the same faith. We have, we're looking to God for help, for direction. And so that is like a glue in a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
When both of you have the same faith, many of the problems are going to be resolved. You still have to work at your marriage. But when you don't have the same faith, when one of you believes in God and the other one doesn't, that's really hard.
That is. Because when you have the same faith, you have a basis, you have a standard, and that's the Word of God. And then you don't have to solve your problems with emotions and with feeling hurt and feeling offended. You go to the Word of God and you both decide, what does God say about this? And then you use your mind, like she was saying, you use your reason, and you make those decisions based on that, and it's so much easier to resolve these problems. We have another one. Is it okay if I read this off?
Yeah, please.
Says, good evening, Bishop. I don't see the name here, but anyway, good evening, Bishop. Based on my situation, these 4 reasons, all 4 of the reasons, were the main factor of why my marriage has almost gone down the drain, or had almost gone down the drain. I could say the root of it was because of being miles away from each other. Like we were saying, it's so important to have that intimacy, that closeness, that bond. Lack of love that could not show, lack of personal support or physical intimacy, and it ended up with betrayal. Without any communication or poor communication, because of the distance and situation of our work, can also be the cause of problems. Lack of money to pay bills for everyday needs can end up being an argument and hating each other, and mostly many people end up in divorce. So for her, it's all 4 was a factor in the struggles that she had in her marriage.
One of the big things that not too long ago, Evelyn and I really learned about, because there were many years that we just kind of had to solve things the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
But we learned about how a male and a female, males and females have different brains. That the biology of a man's brain, physically, a man's brain is different than a woman's brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are certain behaviors, certain ways of reacting that are typically male, and others that are typically female. And of course, everyone is a little bit different. But men around the world tend more to certain characteristics, and women to others. Like normally, typically, women communicate much more.
Yeah.
They're
more talkative.
They're able to communicate about their feelings, to talk about problems to other women, to other people, to their husbands. And men generally are very guarded about that, because they feel threatened when they have to admit that there's a problem, because they feel that they have to be strong, that they have to hold things together, that they have to solve problems, and so they don't want to look weak.
Yes, but it's even like you said, it's a physical thing. It's a biological way that God created a man's brain differently than the way God created a woman's brain. Scientists can see the difference, that in a woman's brain, that area for speaking, for speech, for communication is much bigger and more involved. And I guess because women would become mothers and have to raise children and communicate with them, while for men, that's not such a priority. There are other areas in men's brains that are much more developed than in women's. You know, we have our pros and our cons. But the problem is, as a woman, and I know a lot of you viewers are women, you speak often to your husbands, even to your sons, thinking that they have the same brain as you, that they're going to communicate the same way, and they don't.
Like they're talking to another woman.
Yes, and many of you feel frustrated because you want to open your heart to your husband.
You never
want
did
share.
that to me, right?
No, never. But you want to share and be understood and have a fun conversation like you would with your sister or your mom or your female friends. And you realize that your husband's not responding. So immediately in your mind, you begin to think negative thoughts about him, and that's
That
not.
he doesn't care.
Yeah.
That I'm not important. He doesn't love me.
Mm-hmm.
When that's not the case.
And it's not fair to treat him like he would respond like a woman.
I mean, you don't want your husband to be a female.
Yes.
You want him to be your husband, to be a male. But his reactions and his way of communicating is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, for many men, it's difficult for them to listen to their wives explain
A lot of details.
a lot of details and so forth, because they're more accustomed to resuming everything, just talking about the important points
Summarizing.
and
Mhm.
summarizing it quickly. And so you have to learn to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And marriage is about changing for each other, adapting to each other. All right. Before we go any further, please send in your comments. We're getting some more comments. We have quite a few comments to read, but please send in your comments. We'd like to hear from you. All right. And right now, let's play this testimony of Ignatius. He is in London right now. We know him,
Mm-hmm.
him and his
His
wife.
wife. Mm-hmm.
And he had a very rough time because he grew up in a time in Namibia where there was a lot of fighting, and he was involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
So he grew up in the military, and so he was a
Very-
violent person.
Very rough.
Let's
guy.
watch his testimony.
I came from the military background. I was not really on a gang, but I was on the gang of my own. And many others who used to be soldier, many people who used to be soldier, we became so cold. I killed so many people. I lived that life of a soldier, freedom fighter for so many years. As a result, it kills my feeling. I don't have a problem if someone did something wrong and I know it's wrong to me. Killing him was nothing. It's a big shame to me, a very big shame. I don't want to think about it. In fact, when I think about it, I don't believe I did it. Killing my wife, the person who cares for me, the person who, I should say, the only person who decided and sacrificed her life to live, to put up with me, because not many can do. I think it was indirect killing of myself. I should have actually annihilated myself and my kids, because if I should have pulled the trigger, I should have reverted to more drinking, drugs might be, or more anger, or more killing. And the life of my children should be in complete disaster. After this kind of set with friends, we used to drive nice cars, we have money, the government is on our hands, but sleeping around. If after done all this, when you come back in the morning home and you know that your wife is not happy, you know that the kids, they still have some questions written in their forehead, you feel ashamed to yourself and you think, no, this is not right. I have to stop this. I have to stop this. I must be a man whereby my kids are happy, my wife is happy, a man of a family man, a responsible person, a statesman. I can't be doing this. But that is a short dream. You can only think like that. Before you know, in the afternoon, there's a phone call, we're at your bar, so come and join us. When you go there, it's the same situation, and it's a vicious circle over and over and over repeating itself, but there was no way out for me. The life I lived, it was surrounded by so-called friends, which are not real friends, because friends, they won't lead you to disaster. But by then, I treated them as friends. I realized that I actually don't like it. I don't like it, and it started making me agitated, feeling sorry, feeling guilty. It came to the point that is not enough anymore. I start having one side of my life demanding the real thing, a change, a concrete change, a permanent change. I realized that maybe it's the country, maybe it's the friend, the second friend I have. I must get out here. That's when I started to have an idea to come to United Kingdom. After I came to UK, it wasn't really a change. The same situation started again coming up here in a foreign land, which means that the problem was not the country, it's not the so-called friends, the problem is inside. So I have to find a way to change the inner so that I can be the man I want to be. I went to the center where all the aspect of life has been covered. But that is not just happening one day. We have to throw away, we have to wash our laundry on the public. We have to spill the beans. We have to let go of our pride. We have to throw it away so that we can embrace the advice and guidance we've been received from the center. If you let go of your life and follow God's life, that was the advice. Ignatius, you've been living this life for so many years, and you haven't done good out of that life. You thought you are strong, you thought you are intelligent, you are a man, you are dada, blah, whatever you are, but your life is in a mess. Today I'm a real Ignatius. My children today, they have a father, someone who not only there to provide, but someone who is a friend. My marriage is transformed. We are living in continual honeymoon. We've been married now for 26 years. We just celebrated our 26th anniversary, and I can't ask for more. The only regret I have, I should have started a long time. Today I can look people in the eye and tell them that no matter philosophy, scientist, I'm not against scientists and philosophy, but no matter what you have there, it cannot change you the way God can change.
You know, Ignatius is such a kind, loving person right now. He's a good husband. He's a good father. He loves helping people in the church. He is transformed. And he was able to become a good husband, a good father, because God transformed him. And when he realized that, he said that it wasn't that he was, when he moved countries, it wasn't the country that was his problem. It wasn't his friends that was his problem. It was him. Inside of him that was a problem. So he needed to change on the inside. You know, one thing that a lot of people don't realize, there are no marriage problems.
Right.
Marriage problems do not exist. Marriage is two people with their own individual problems coming together, and those individual problems start affecting the other person. So if you want to have a good marriage, you got to work on yourself. And one of the big things is always looking at the other person and say, she needs to change this, she needs to change that. That is a recipe for disaster. No marriage is going to work when you do that. You have to look at yourself and change what you need to change, and let the other person change what they need to change. But I can't stand here and just criticize Evelyn for everything wrong and act like I'm a saint. No, marriage doesn't work like that. And if I start working on myself, Evelyn is going to see that, and she'll respect that greatly. She'll really appreciate that, and that will encourage her to work on herself.
Right. You know, this testimony is an example that even extreme marriage problems have a solution.
Yes.
If there's humility. The great thing about Ignatius was he was willing to admit, I have a problem and I need help. And he went to the right place. He came to God. He came to God's house. He came to the church. And he was able to receive everything he needed to become this wonderful husband he is today. The thing is that there are some situations where marriages have gone to their limit, and if someone wants to quit, if someone wants to divorce, there are situations where it has to be done. It's the right choice. But many, many marriages are ending. They don't need to end because people have not sought out the real solution, which is God. They haven't been humble enough to say, I've got a problem. I need help.
They haven't turned to God and believed and started to use their faith to see something supernatural. They haven't really gone to battle for their marriage, for their husband, their wife, because we have to fight against the negative forces that are at
Yes.
work. There are spiritual forces that don't want your marriage to work. And so the spiritual aspect is the most important. You know, we're talking about money, love, communication, intimacy. But at the root of all of this is the power of God and faith.
Right.
So Ignatius' wife, Apollonia,
Yes, I know her very well.
she went through many years of abuse with Ignatius.
But she developed a faith as well and fought for him.
And now she's using that to help abused women.
Yes, she's a part of a group in our church called the Rahab Group that reaches out to women who've gone through abuse. So if any of you have gone through that, you know where you can come to find the help you need.
But it's amazing that she used that experience, she overcame, and now she is using that to help other women who are in abusive relationships.
Yes, she was able to turn it around.
So let's look at a couple more.
Well, it seems like most of the votes are communication. Most people are saying that the big problem is lack of communication. Ngo Oi Lei has written, good evening, Bishop and everyone. For me, it's lack of communication because it can quickly cause misunderstandings, resentment, and feelings that are emotionally far away, distant from each other. Because marriage needs a strong base of healthy and effective communication to be able to sustain itself. Rufalita also wrote, in my opinion, lack of communication, lack of respect. In a relationship, communication and respect are very important. So sometimes there is communication, but it's just done the wrong way. Sometimes you think you're going to communicate, but you're angry, you're yelling, you're accusing, you're calling someone names, you're assuming that they're bad people or making them feel like they're a bad person. And so that's not true communication. That's just all your emotions coming up through your mouth and hurting the other person. You're attacking the other person.
For example, a problem that I used to have a lot would be that it was very hard for me to admit that I was doing something wrong. And so whenever you would point out something, I would end up turning it back on you and finding some fault with you. And it was a very bad habit, maybe something I had learned from my parents, but I had to learn to quit that because that was blocking communication, proper
Yes.
communication. Because if your spouse has a problem with you, has a complaint, no matter how invalid you think it is, there must be something to it. At least you have to recognize that is something that your spouse feels deeply about, and you have to address it. And they may be exaggerating it. It may be. Maybe you've done it so much that they are really, they are just kind of burn out, and they're exploding about that particular situation. And so you have to acknowledge that there is something that needs to be changed.
Right. There's so much we could talk about. with this topic. Here's another one from Daisy. Thank you, Daisy. She says, in my opinion, why marriages are ending rapidly is a lack of love. Marriage, at an early age, they think they get married at an early age and think that they love each other, but it's just an infatuation. They're not yet ready and unlikely financially or even emotionally to be stable. They don't even know that marriage brings a lot of responsibility. If you're not able to handle your duties as a spouse, it results in frustration.
It's interesting how people get married even without preparing themselves, like you're saying, Daisy. They don't prepare themselves financially. They don't prepare themselves emotionally. There are a lot of people who get married, they've never read a book about marriage. They've never read anything or talked to anyone about, what they need to do to prepare themselves to get married. And so it's very dangerous. Like I think we've said many times, you have to do more to get a driver's license. Much more to get a driver's license than you do to get a marriage license. And marriage is for life.
The thing is, even if a young couple does everything wrong, they get married because they're infatuated. But if both of them decide, let's fix this, there is hope. There is hope. But like we said before, there are some situations where it is best just to part ways. But if there's any way that you can fight for it, if you want to use your intelligence, seek out help, seek out God, start doing things the right way, there may be hope.
And one thing that Daisy is talking about is that about love, a lack of love. Love is not a feeling.
Right.
Love is a commitment. When you have love, you don't have all these gushy feelings all the time. Sometimes love is just very ordinary. Love is sometimes me offering to wash the dishes for Evelyn. I hate to wash dishes. It's not, I don't feel happy washing dishes, but I do it so that she has more free time. And so when I offer to do that, and I do that for her, she feels love from me. That's what love is. And me offering to do that, something that I don't particularly like to do, that's what love is about. Helping each other out, going the extra mile, doing something extra, thinking about the other person. That's what love really is.
Yes, so if a marriage is starting to grow cold, don't worry that you don't feel a lot of emotion now. If you feel like there's hope and you want to fight for the marriage, start making practical steps. Start showing kindness. Start showing love, expressing it. Don't wait for the feelings. Just start to express it in practical ways that make sense for your spouse and see how things can start to reverse this wrong road that you've been heading down. You can reverse and head down the right road.
We have a video. We still have many more of you who are writing in. Seems like you have a lot to say about this subject. So Desiree has prepared a video for us on 5, I forget what she says, like 5 tips or 5 things that you can do to help your marriage. So let's watch this right now. We'll be right back.
Good evening, Bishop. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you again another week. And it's a very interesting topic again today about relationships. And specifically, I'm going to be sharing now 5 ways to sustain a happy marriage. So first, I think it's important to understand that getting married, the action of getting married is relatively easy. Okay, there's some planning involved, of course, but at the end of the day, what's really involved in marriage is in getting married is going there on the day and then having it officiated. But then the challenging part is when you start living your life together. It's when you have to work together to actually make it a happy marriage. Now, every single marriage has to be properly maintained. It's just like with anything else. Just as you take care of your body to be healthy, just as you have to do a good job at work in order to be successful, the same, you have to maintain your marriage properly in order for it to be healthy and happy as well. So what do we need in order to make sure that a marriage is happy? Well, there are just a few things. Like, it's often the little things that matter the most. So communication, indulging in activities together, healthy intimacy, being sensitive to each other's feelings, for example. But let's delve in a little bit deeper into those aspects of how to make a marriage happy. So number one, communicate. This is the most important aspect of any successful marriage. Communication should be open, honest, and precise, because that through being precise, being honest with each other, that's how you know how you can work on yourself, and how your spouse can also know how he or she can also work on themselves. And as you start, it's not just about telling each other negative things though. It's about sharing the positive and the negative together. And especially in terms of negative feelings, couples should be able to share without any fear, right? Without assumptions that may lead to misunderstandings and misconceptions. So that's the first point. Number two, spend quality time together. So spending time together is not necessarily about how much time you spend together, but as to how quality the time that you're spending together is, right? So it's recommended that you should have at least 30 minutes a day with your spouse of effective, in that moment that you're together, you have effective communication, you're being loving, caring towards each other, and you're doing different activities together. Why do you need to do that? Because that's when you develop that rapport with each other. You grow closer as you have those experiences together, and it even helps you to develop interests together as well. Number three, get familiar with each other. So verbal and nonverbal communication are both equally important. So when we talk about getting familiar, in this case, it's more about nonverbal communication. Touch is vital in bonding and connecting. Touch is a primitive desire for love, attention, and connection. Intimacy is not only about sex, but also physical touch. So it could just be holding hands, a kiss here and there, cuddling. But that's very important for the other person to understand and to feel that love from the spouse. Number four, respect individual time and interests. So as much as you should spend time together, there are times also you have to respect your spouse's need to be alone, or to explore their own interests, because you're not necessarily going to like all the same things, right? So, for example, when maybe your husband comes back from a hard day at work, it can be very tempting to go there and be like, oh, hello, and you start talking to them and trying to get as much out of them. But of course, if the person is tired, it could be even the wife, doesn't have to be the husband coming home. They want a little bit of time to settle down, get used to their surroundings as they get home, and then, choose wisely the right time to start talking to each other, to engage with each other again. Last but not least, number five, express gratitude. Acknowledging your spouse is very, very important because, they want to feel appreciated. They want to feel wanted, needed, and respected. And when you remember to say thank you, even for the little things, that makes them realize that you appreciate everything that they do for you. And that develops a sense of love and understanding. And it's also a form of communication, actually. Because as you say it, okay, you might think, oh, my spouse knows that I love them, right? But when you say it, then they really, it reinforces that sense of love between you two.
Thank you, Desiree, for that. A lot of good points. And, it's, I know that many of you who are watching this have that extra problem of being so far from your spouse. Mm-hmm. And so there's not that element of physical touch and
intimacy.
It's great that today you can, we have We have
WhatsApp and
WhatsApp and smartphones, and you can
FaceTime.
talk to people every day, and you can see them, you can see your kids. And here in Korea, where we are, I talk to quite a few people, and I talk about, you know, are you married? Do you have kids? Do you talk to your family? And there are a lot of them here who will call their family every day, every single day, which is really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's really healthy. I'm sure some of them, because they're lonely, maybe they don't have anything else to do, but if it's done right, you know, your kids need to see you,
Mm-hmm.
and your spouse. And so in that time, you should really try to practice these things and really show appreciation,
Yes.
show gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
and keep that close connection. Because one huge problem is unfaithfulness, right?
Right, it is a huge problem. And I know we have listeners, viewers from many countries who watch these videos, but we have a large quantity that are from the Philippines. And in the Philippines, divorce is illegal, which means that a lot of people have marriages. Maybe they got married too young, like many of you have commented. Sometimes you marry young, you're immature, you don't know what you're doing. You marry the wrong person who's not faithful to you. And then the marriage grows cold, but you're unable to divorce and move on. So what ends up happening is these two members of this marriage drift apart and end up having multiple different partners. And that just leads to unhappiness because there's nothing stable. There's no stable relationship. There's no real marriage. And that can be really sad. So if there's any way you can save your marriage, you can work on your marriage, do so. Do what you can. And what you're saying about being able to communicate over the phone, for video chatting with your spouse, even though you can't have that physical contact, those hugs, that that intimacy that you miss, it's amazing how much just real, pure kindness in communication can build an intimacy between you. When you can look into each other's face, into each other's eyes, and speak words of kindness and encouragement to each other. So one thing you want to think is when you call, are you just talking about the money? Are you just talking about the bills? Are you just talking about the
weather?
kids?
Yeah.
Are you complaining that you should have paid this and you should have done this? Or are you really using that time to create that intimate bond?
Because there is business that needs to be done, but there's the other part that's crucial, and you can't forget that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be building the relationship and keeping up that intimacy. Intimacy is much more. I mean, women know this. Sometimes men don't. Intimacy is much more than physical intimacy in bed. It's about, for those of you who are communicating long distance, it's in the way that you talk and what you're asking about, showing concern, showing that you remember small details, that you're keeping track of that person. You remember what they're doing and what they're going through and what their worries are. So when you talk about these things, you are showing an intimacy. You're having intimacy with that person because you're showing that they're very important to you.
Right.
So that builds a relationship. It's a powerful tool. Maritas wrote in and said, it's very true, Bishop, love is not feeling. It's about showing it to our partner.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, 100%. Meya said, good evening, Bishop and Evelyn. For me, lack of communication in marriage is the most crucial because it can make them feel tempted to cheat on their partner and to seek someone to fill that feeling, that lack in their marriage.
Right. And this can happen if your right there in the same house or even distant from each other. If you don't know how to communicate with each other, or if you do know how to communicate with each other, you know how to make that other person feel special, loved, valued, and they want to be with you. They'll value you back. They won't want to stray and betray you.
So I know that here in Korea, among Koreans, divorce is increasing at a very fast pace.
Right.
Because Korea, over the last 40, 50 years, has just developed at a super quick pace, and so many things are changing in society. And one of them is marriage. And there are people here who are, divorce used to be seen as something very taboo.
Right. It's a forbidden thing. It used to be forbidden.
But now couples are choosing divorce over an unhappy marriage. But also, in general, there's a big lack of teaching, good teaching on marriage. Or people are like, men, I think, typically have this attitude, no, I don't need anybody to teach me how to be a husband. I don't need to go into a marriage course. Many times women are willing to, but men are not. And so it creates a lot of problems because we need to know more on this subject.
We need to learn.
It's just not automatic, the things that you need to do in marriage.
Right. But here at Succeed in Life Church, here in Korea, we can teach you
Yes.
all the deeper details, because what we cover today is just a tiny tip of the iceberg of what we can teach you about how to have a happy, healthy, stable marriage, even long distance. And in any of our churches, our UCKGs, our universal churches, SILCs, anywhere, our pastors are equipped and able to teach you how to have a happy marriage.
So these programs are sponsored by the UCKG Help Center and Succeed in Life Center. Here in Korea, we call it Succeed in Life Church. And we're going to show you our addresses right after this program, because we're spread all through Asia and Oceania. And we want you to look up your nearest location and get the help that you need. Right after this program, Bishop James from Taiwan is going to come on with Rescuing Families. Right before our program today was Real Facts with Pastor Fabian. But Rescuing Families is going to come on after this. So look for that program and watch it. It's going to be a really encouraging program about your family. And just before we leave, we're not going to pray for you today, but we're determined that you are blessed.
Yes.
We determined that if you're having problems in this area, that God is going to give you the wisdom to overcome, to make proper decisions. One last thing I'd like to leave you with is that friends, close friends of the opposite sex, are a no-no. It's not a good idea. I do not have female friends that I'm close to.
And neither do I have male friends that I'm close to.
It's just not a good idea, because something is going to happen. Maybe you don't have any ulterior motives, but the other person does.
Might, yeah.
Or yeah. So that's where problems develop.
Potential problems.
You know, I don't have the number of some female friend that Evelyn doesn't know. We have couples that we're friends with, but also we are very open about things. You know, Evelyn knows the password on my phone. I know the password on hers, and that's it.
Nothing to hide.
So thank you so much for all your comments. Sorry we didn't get to read all of them, but we'll be back again next week for another program. God bless.